Hello everybody. Hello and welcome back to the 48 Laws of Power discussion series, a New York Times best-selling book by author Robert Greene. Tonight we'll be getting into the 42nd law, but before we do that, let's say hello to my favorite emoji spammers from Rumble, Cat Ninja and Firsty, Suzanne saying, can't stay no internet. That's not cool. No internet is the bum. Oh, Firsty's everywhere. Although it doesn't say on this one where he's from. How's everybody doing today? It's another fucking Monday, right? Super ambitious kind of day. Perfect time to just kick back, relax, and jump into the 48 Laws of Power. I am glad to hear that, Mr. Shot. Are you still running? I hope you are. I haven't stopped chasing you yet. Seems like it might be a bit of a light crowd tonight. I don't actually know, like, how many we got over on Rumble right now. 4. 4 on Rumble. 0 on elsewhere. Let's see if what the X is showing 0. Okay. Sup, Frog? Well, sup, Castro? My Rumble Ghetto extraordinaire. Welcome to the party, my dude. Hold on, I'm just trying to get everything together. This is This is the way. Well, hello, Div. Listening while you dinner, huh? Makes sense. So, anyway, me and my tiny little crew here. Hold on, I lost the book, guys. I have no idea where I put it. What is up, my dude? Alright, let's do this. Law 42. Where did I put the damn. There it is. Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will scatter. Any first thoughts? Because my first thoughts are, well, yeah, that makes sense. The shepherd tends to the sheep, is the leader and caretaker, and when the thing that protects them is put in danger, sheep are generally stupid. And they do sheep need someone to follow? Have you ever seen any just random wild sheep? I mean, I guess they exist, but usually in the mountains where predators can't get to them because they can't climb. Those are, I mean, like bighorn sheep and whatnot. Sheep generally dumb, panicky animals, very herd like in their nature. Maybe they need a shepherd to follow them. And maybe if you want to disperse some sheep, yeah, I mean, it's usually a good idea if you got a decent sized flock of sheep to have a shepherd or two, but I believe the point is indicating specifically that, well, my best guess would be that if you strike at the leadership of anything, those who follow those leaders will be thrown into complete disarray and they will have no idea what to do, because we've seen countless examples of this throughout history. I'm curious to see what the judgment have to say about it. I haven't done any looking forward on this one, y'all. Trouble can often be traced to a single strong individual, the stirrer, the arrogant underling, the poisoner of goodwill. If you allow such people room to operate, others will succumb to their influence. Do not wait for the troubles they cause to multiply. Do not try to negotiate with them. They are irredeemable. Neutralize their influence by isolating or banishing them. Strike at the source of the trouble, and the sheep will scatter. So, in this context, they're literally saying, like, you in a position of power, like when somebody starts mobilizing a a, a communist takeover, like a collective, if you will, a collective against you, there's usually one person that's responsible, one, maybe two people responsible for generally stirring up the crowd and building the collective. It's, hey, Maddie, people want to be told what to do. Conservatives always believe incorrectly that people want freedom. Yep, you're damn right. People want to be taken care of. Liberty is a human instinct, but it's not human nature. What people, what human nature want is a benevolent master to take care of them and not infringe their. They want it both ways. And unfortunately, you can't actually have it both ways. You can only have it either liberty or which is personal responsibility, or you can have someone take care of you. But in this regard, it is literally in the regards of people leading collectives, and you take that person out of the equation, the leadership, and the rest of whatever resistance you're facing falls apart. I guess that works invertedly too. Like, if you are the stirrer, the poisoner of goodwill, you want to strike at the leadership that you are trying to take down. Uh, Pretty sure this works both ways because oftentimes you're not going to find a whole hell of a lot of loyalty on both sides once the entity in charge is gone. Like, most people are just loyal to the next powerful person in line. Almost to a giant fault of humanity. Liberty is hard. You are correct. Because personal responsibility is dangerous and it's a lot of work. And most people aren't doing it. Most people are not going to do that. Observance of the law 1. Oh, goody. I love it when there's a number at the end. Near the end of the 6th century BC, the city-state of Athens overthrew a series of petty tyrants who had dominated its politics for decades. We could learn a thing or two here in the, what is it, 21st century or whatever it is. We could learn a thing or two from 6th century BC Athens. They overthrew their corrupt petty tyrant politicians too. It can be done. It established instead a democracy. Oh, dear God. That was to last over a century. Only 100 years. Their democracy lasted over a century. That's 100 years. That's it. A democracy that became the source of its power and its proudest achievement. But as the democracy evolved, as democracy do, so did a problem the Athenians had never faced. How to deal with those who did not concern themselves with the cohesion of a small city surrounded by enemies. I mean, I'm looking at you, Israel, just saying, who did not work for its greater glory, but thought of only themselves and their own ambitions and petty intrigues. The Athenians understood that these people, if left alone, would sow dissension, divide the city into factions, and stir up anxieties, all of which could lead to the ruin of their democracy. So, the funny part about it is the thing that can ruin your democracy is democracy. It is people promising dumber people that they will do this thing for them, but you have to support me. In reality, when all these people are seeking to serve as their own power, then you end up with a situation like we have where a bunch of people that do the democracy are literally entrenched in serving their own power and their own beliefs. So, uh, not working for the greater glory, they don't want to make America great again. They only think of themselves and their own ambitions and petty intrigues. Violent punishment no longer suited the new civilized order that Athens had created. Mm, you're going to have to sell me this one. Instead, the citizens found another more satisfying and less brutal way to deal with the chronically selfish. Every year they would gather in the marketplace and write on a piece of earthenware an ostracon, the name of an individual they wanted to see banished from the city for 10 years. If a particular name appeared on 6,000 ballots, that person would be instantly exiled. The person with the most ostraca recording his name would suffer the 10-year ostracism. This ritual expulsion became kind of a festival. Oh man, I like the ostracism. I don't think that that's is useful of a tool in current culture where there's so much of a global connection that you can be ostracized from any community and still be subversive to that community just by the nature of how communication works now. So ostracism in general today, not actually as useful of a tool as ostracism was then, but it does seem like a nice, gentle way to deal with shit stirrers. And imagine if we could do this with 6,000 votes. I want to go ahead and ostracize Donald Trump and Joe Biden together and take Kamala with you. I mean, if we could get 6,000 people to vote for ostracism, how many people would we kick out next year? We could probably get rid of all of the federal government. We're close enough to it. Just collectivize 6,000 people groups on specific names, and they can all go. Fuck them. What a joy to be able to banish those irritating, anxiety inducing individuals who wanted to rise above the group they should have served. This is the problem with collectivism is it does not actually embrace merit. That's why if you want to rise above and stand out, you're going to get the ostracism, you're going to get the exile for 10 years. And by the time you get back, nobody's going to remember who you are because all your friends will be dead by then. Nobody lives more than 20 years in 6th century BC. In 490 BC, Aristides, one of the great generals of Athenian history, who I have never heard of until today, helped defeat the Persians at the Battle of Marathon. I wonder if it took a long time. Meanwhile, off the battlefield, his fairness as a judge had earned him the nickname the Just. So this is Aristides the Just, y'all. Not to be confused with Aristides the corrupt as shit. But as the years went by, the Athenians came to dislike him. He made such a show of his righteousness. Oh, you're one of those. He's one of those guys. He makes a show of his righteousness. We just talked about this yesterday over at Cool Frogs. You can't get a backup shepherd or a second flock. You only have like multiple shepherds, and even if you divide a flock in half, it's still one flock. It's just in two groups. And this, they believed, disguised his feelings of superiority and scorn for the common folk. So he's gone from Aristides the Just to Aristides the Asshole. His omnipresence in Athenian politics became obnoxious. The citizens grew tired of hearing him called the Just. That's why they changed his name to Aristides the Asshole. They feared that this was just the type of man, judgmental, haughty, who would eventually stir up fierce divisions among them. in 482 BC, despite Aristides' invaluable expertise in the continuing war with the Persians, they collected the ostraka and had him banished. Sup adequate alcohol over on the Rumbo side. Well, that sucks for Aristides the asshole, right? Like, they nicknamed him the Just for being just that, an excellent judge, and an invaluable general in the war. But because you're kind of an asshole, and you don't, we're basically kicking you out because you annoy us at this point. You don't really seem to be doing anything. You're just annoying us. Oh shit! Did I miss it? My bad. I missed the cheers. I I I completely did that. They call me a crontard. I have chronic tardiness. Cheers, Mr. Liquor, and everybody else who is definitely taking this moment to do a cheers thing. After Aristides' ostracism, the great general Themistocles emerged as the city's premier leader. But his many honors and victories went to his head, and he too became arrogant and overbearing. Do you see a pattern here of people who are gaining constant success in democracy? It's like a crab bucket, y'all. The base level retard wants to drag you back down because you make them feel inferior about themselves. Constantly reminding the Athenians of his triumphs in battle, the temples he had built, the dangers he had fended off. He seemed to be saying that without him the city would come to ruin. Probably not. That's their probably worst issue is one single man is not going to make the city come to ruin. And so in 472 BC, Themistocles' name was filled in on the Ostraka, and the city was rid of his poisonous presence. Poisonous presence, mind you. What was he guilty of? Being proud of himself. The pride goeth before the fall. For real, for real. That is not a joke. That's log. And I don't want to read the conquest of Per when it says the conquest of Peru at the bottom. That just gives me great anxiety. The greatest political figure in 5th century Athens was undoubtedly Pericles. Although several times threatened with ostracism, he avoided that fate by maintaining close ties with the people. Perhaps he had learned a lesson as a child from his favorite tutor, the incomparable Damon, who excelled above all other Athenians in his intelligence, his musical skills, and his rhetorical abilities. It was Damon who had trained Pericles in the arts of ruling. But he, too, suffered ostracism for his superior airs, and his insulting manner toward the commoner stirred up too much resentment. Stupid people hate smart people, unfortunately. If you're a smart people, you have dealt with the unfortunate reality of this. I am not going to lie to you. I don't know where the Bijou is. I haven't seen the Bijou since like Wednesday, I think. At least. Yeah, the Dimmies are the worst. I mean, it's not your fault that you are superior to them and that's intimidating. Toward the end of the century, there lived a man named Hyperbolus. Most writers of the time described him as the city's most worthless citizen. Darth Hyperbolus, then? He did not care what anyone thought of him, and slandered whomever he disliked. He amused some, but irritated many more. In 417 BC, Hyperbolus saw an opportunity to stir up anger against the two leading politicians of the time, Alcibiades and Nicias. He hoped that one of the two would be ostracized and that he would rise in that man's place. His campaign seemed likely to succeed. The Athenians disliked Alcibiades' flamboyant and carefree lifestyle and were wary of Nicias' wealth and aloofness. They seemed certain to ostracize one or the other. But Alcibiades and Nicias, although they were otherwise enemies, pooled their resources and managed to turn the ostracism on Hyperbolus instead. His obnoxiousness, they argued, could only be terminated by banishment. Aha, here we come to the actual observance of the law as it was explained in the judgment. You got two people who have got power who would otherwise be battling each other, but you got this little obnoxious shithead instead trying to break your grip on the power. So rather than fight each other, we put that aside for now. We'll get back to that later. We have to deal with this nuisance. Earlier sufferers of ostracism had been formidable, powerful men. Hyperbolus, however, was a low buffoon, and with his banishment, the Athenians felt that ostracism had been degraded, and so they ended the practice that for nearly 100 years had been one of the keys to keeping the peace within Athens. Oh man. So sad for the Athenian people. But it was cool when, it was just the powerful and the snooty and the superior, like when they were getting kicked out. But oh, you're kicking normal people out now, like low level people. Oh Nope, this is democracy. We're not doing this shit anymore. Absolutely. This was good when we had the numbers, but not anymore. Nope, nope, nope. We're gonna put an end to this immediately. Interpretation. The ancient Athenians had social instincts unknown today. The passage of centuries has blunted them. Citizens, in the true sense of the word, and what does it mean to be a citizen? Like assimilation to a culture of the fact that your collective, your nation, whatever your collective is more important and most important thing. It's more important than you. That is the understanding of what a citizen is. The Athenians sensed the dangers posed by asocial behavior. So if you don't fit in with the sheep, you're going to get ostracized from the herd, especially if you're threatening the collective in general by getting too powerful. And saw how such behavior often disguises itself in other forms. The holier than thou attitude that silently seeks to impose its standards on others, overweening ambition at the expense of the common good, the flaunting of superiority, quiet scheming, terminal obnoxiousness. Some of these behaviors would eat away at the city's cohesion by creating factions and sowing dissension, because this is the problem with democracy and even within a fairly uniform citizenry is you're going to get people who disagree. Others would ruin the democratic spirit by making the common citizen feel inferior and envious. I mean, if the shoe fits, I'm I'm not saying that it don't. And we're all grateful for that, Firsty, because God, how little would we all feel if you did? The Athenians did not try to re-educate people who acted in these ways, or to absorb them somehow into the group, or to impose a violent punishment that would only create other problems. The solution was quick and effective. Get rid of them. And I mean, if we had a place like Australia that we could send all these people to, that they could never find their way back, I'd be down for ostracism and banishment. Unfortunately, at this point in time, we've gotten to sticking people in cages and leaving them there and forgetting about them. Meanwhile, they still have contact with the outside world. You can't ever cut that off. And they still are able to influence things. That's lovely. Within any group, trouble can most often be traced to a single source. That's me. The unhappy chronically dissatisfied one who will always stir up dissension and infect the group with his or her ill ease. Only when I'm drunk. Before you know what hit you, the dissatisfaction spreads because people are like, oh, yeah, what's up with that? Like, I don't know what's up with that flood at the southern border, and what's up with this inflation numbers, and what's up with all this money you send into, like, you know, nations that uh, rhyme with Ukraine and Israel. I mean, what's up with all that? People want to know, like we'd like to know what's up with all of these things. And if you have power and you're trying to exercise your authority of your power over people, you would want to really silence dissenting voices like that. So you might go so far as to like kick people off of social media or file hundreds of lawsuits against them or get a rigged court to like try to bankrupt them so that they can't operate anymore. Just a few potential examples of what one might do in current society to silence dissenters. You might uh, label a whistleblower a domestic terrorist, a traitor, even for exposing illegal things that your power structure is doing. These these things, none of these things are off the table. If you know, you know. And they do that for a reason. It's by design. It's all by design because if you can form a collective group to threaten their power, that's trouble they don't need. Act before it becomes impossible to disentangle one strand of misery from another, or to see how the whole thing started. Because once it goes from being a little snowball to an avalanche, you won't be able to stop it. First, recognize the troublemakers by their overbearing presence or by their complaining nature. Once you spot them, do not try to reform them or appease them. That will only make things worse. You cannot reason with these people. Do not attack them, whether directly or indirectly, for they are poisonous in nature and will work underground to destroy you. Yes, yes, this, absolutely. Do as the Athenians did. Banish them before it is too late. It is unfortunately 2024, and that's impossible. Separate them from the group before they become the eye of a whirlpool. Do not give them time to stir up anxieties and sow discontent. Do not give them room to move. Let one person suffer so the rest can live in peace. What is weird? I'm curious. Unfortunately, because we can't just go banishing people in our current situation, like the way you banish people now is that same way they banished some troublesome people that I can think of, like a man who owned a private island. And then there was another gentleman who was talking about ending the Fed. and he got himself a very special haircut. And then there's this orange guy. Yeah, how people can stir up a whole storm on their own. Yeah, I mean, in current culture, the orange man wearing the number 45 jersey is become the eye of the storm. He has stirred up an entire storm single-handedly. Because if you think about that guy, like who who stands on a plane with him, like Elon might be like the next most stirry of shit. But like, yeah, the Donald and Elon. Did somebody say storm? No, we said space lasers. Speaking of space lasers, it's Shylomania. Hey, Shy. When the trees fall, the monkeys scatter. Chinese saying. I mean, if you happen to be monkeys living in trees, yeah, duh. That's a fun Chinese saying. I don't know what they mean by it, cause duh. Observance? Do we want to get into the observance of the law too? Because I mean, I think we did a fairly decent explanation of the interpretation on the first observance. Anybody have any thoughts about it? How's the Rumble Gang doing over there? I see that we just got one Twitter viewer on the X platform. We got 5 viewers on the YouTube platform, and 5 viewers on six. Okay, we're tied. Cool. Usually the Rumble numbers are killing it. It must be a busy night. People must be elsewhere. I'm assuming. I didn't get the memo that there was something happening. Shout out to the Rumble Gang. Too bad StreamYard hasn't and will never actually integrate the custom Rumble. That's funny. I don't remember, actually. I just found it online. I can't remember the site. It's been sitting on my hard drive for over a year now. I forgot a long time ago. If you Google it, that's all I did was I did a quick Google search. Yeah, I mean the Internet Library is definitely vast. Yep, I was actually plotting doing a uh, a reading at some point through The Art of War myself on the channel. I've got a lot of things that I want to get to before that, though, so that one is probably a long ways off, but definitely another thing that I would recommend that everybody read, The Art of War. Like, that'll be a fun one to discuss. Sun Tzu was quite brilliant. That is why the art of war is still valid some 3,000 years later. Observance of the Law 2. In 1296, the cardinals of the Catholic Church met in Rome to select a new pope. They chose Cardinal Gaetani, for he was incomparably shrewd. Such a man would make the Vatican a great power. Man, Jesus did not want y'all to become a great power. Jesus wanted you to spread his message. Well, I'm glad you enjoy them. I love having these conversations, especially with the way my chat goes sometimes. But I definitely love sharing my thoughts and opinions on these things. Hopefully, someone finds it and says, "Oh, I didn't see how power is literally being exerted all around me." You really only have to look. It's not hard to find. And that's mostly why I do it. My own narcissism. Taking the name Boniface the Eighth, Gaetani soon proved he deserved the cardinal's high opinion of him. He plotted his moves carefully in advance and stopped at nothing to get his way. Oh, this is exactly what we need from somebody running the church. Divinity, the Catholics don't know how to do church. Yeah, you got to tell them. Once in power, Boniface quickly crushed his rivals and unified the papal states. Crushed his rivals? No, that's not cool. The European powers began to fear him and sent delegates to negotiate with him. The German king Albrecht of Austria even yielded some territory to Boniface. All was proceeding according to the Pope's plan. One piece did not fall into place, however, and that was Tuscany, the richest part of Italy. If Boniface could conquer Florence, Tuscany's most powerful city, the region would be his. But Florence was a proud republic and would be hard to defeat. The Pope had to play his cards skillfully. The Catholic's been framed? Oh no. Is this is this all a setup? Is this all propaganda? Are we even living in real life? Florence was divided by two rival factions. Oh my god! Do you see these factions named, y'all? The blacks and the whites. This is Florence, Italy in the 1296. This has nothing to do with modern day. I know I'm on multiple platforms. The whites were the merchant families that had recently and quickly risen to power and wealth. The blacks were the older money. Oh, okay. So this is not going to get into complete racism here. Because of their popularity with the people, the whites retained control of the city to the blacks increasing oh dear God, there's increasing resentment with the blacks. The feud between the two grew steadily more bitter. Oh, we got to get away from this. Whatever this next little insert is here, we're going to have to read it just to get away from this damn racism for a second. It's a joke, y'all. I'm joking. You don't need to take it so hard. It's not a dick. The wolves and the sheep. Once upon a time, the wolves sent an embassy to the sheep, desiring that there might be peace between them for the time to come. Why, said they, should we be forever waging this deadly strife? Those wicked dogs are the cause of all. They are incessantly barking at us and provoking us. Send them away, and there will be no longer any obstacle to our eternal friendship and peace. The silly sheep listened, the dogs were dismissed, and the flock, thus deprived of their best protectors, became an easy prey to their treacherous enemy. Ooh, I mean, I love Aesop's fables. What did we learn here about the wolves and the sheep? What I said earlier was true. Sheep are really fucking stupid, always have been. But if you look at, like, seriously what's currently going on right now in a lot of western countries, like, they're denigrating and destroying their military like we are. I mean, we can't recruit people anymore because of certain decisions that have been made for the last like decade or so in regards to how the military has been ran. Now nobody wants to join, so like there's big protectors. We got a wide open fence and wolves pouring across in record numbers, and the sheep largely have no idea how easily they're being preyed upon. Back to the blacks and the whites now. Here, Boniface saw his chance. He would plot to help the blacks take over the city, and Florence would be in his pocket. Okay, so the Catholic Church is a Democrat. And as he studied the situation, he began to focus on one man, Dante Alighieri, the celebrated writer, poet, and ardent supporter of the whites. Dante had always been interested in politics. He believed passionately in the Republic and often chastised his fellow citizens for their lack of spine. Ooh, that's an interesting comment there, Castro. Sheep will fight the dogs who are protecting them, thinking they are attacking real sheep, not the wolves wearing sheep's clothing. I mean, that much can be said for how easily some people can be deceived. He also happened to be the city's most eloquent public speaker. In 1300, the year Boniface began plotting to take over Tuscany, Dante's fellow citizens had voted him into Florence's highest elected position, making him one of the city's six priors. During his 6 months term in the post, he had stood firmly against the blacks and against all of the Pope's attempts to sow disorder. I mean, we could call it stupidity, but stupidity is a byproduct of laziness, and laziness is a byproduct of it basically like so much success that people no longer feel the need to try hard anymore. And we didn't ever carry tryharding as a value once shit got easy. We lost that value because, well, Shit easy now. No need try hard no more. Relax. Rest. But be vigilant. Or, I mean, suffer the consequences. By 1301, however, Boniface had a new plan. He called in Charles de Valois, powerful brother of the King of Surrender Monkey Land. That would be France for those who don't hang out here often. To help bring order to Tuscany. As Charles marched through northern Italy and Florence seethed with anxiety and fear, Dante quickly emerged as the man who could rally the people, arguing vehemently against appeasement and working desperately to arm the citizens and to organize resistance against the Pope and his puppet French prince. We don't need the Catholic Church taking over everything. Get out of here. By hook or by crook, Boniface had to neutralize Dante. And so, even as on the one hand he threatened Florence with Charles de Valois, on the other he held out the olive branch, the possibility of negotiations, hoping Dante would take the bait. And indeed, the Florentines decided to send a delegation to Rome and try to negotiate a peace. To head the mission, predictably, they chose Dante. Oh boy, this seems like a bad choice. Some warned the poet that the wily Pope was setting up a trap to lure him away. Duh! But Dante went to Rome anyway, arriving as the French army stood before the gates of Florence. He felt sure that his eloquence and reason would win the Pope over and save the city. Oh my goodness. You think this man of great ambition is going to be won over by words? Yet when the Pope met the poet and the Florentine delegates, he instantly intimidated them as he did so many. Fall on your knees before me, he bellowed at their first meeting. Submit to me. I tell you that in all truth I have nothing in my heart but to promote your peace. This sounds like an avalanche of bullshit. Succumbing to his powerful presence, the Florentines listened as the Pope promised to look after their interests. He then advised them to return home, leaving one of their members behind to continue the talks. Boniface signaled that the man to stay was to be Dante. He spoke with the utmost politeness, but in essence, it was an order. So this is not a request. You will leave this man with me. What could go wrong, y'all? What could possibly go wrong? And so, Dante remained in Rome, and while he and the Pope continued their dialogue, Florence fell apart. With no one to rally the whites, and with Charles de Valois using the Pope's money to bribe and sow dissension, the whites disintegrated. Some arguing for negotiations, others switching sides. Facing an enemy now divided and unsure of itself, the blacks easily destroyed them within weeks, exacting violent revenge on them. And once the blacks stood firm, oh my god, there's a racism in here somewhere. Oh my goodness. And once the blacks stood firmly in power, the Pope finally dismissed Dante from Rome. Of course, the blacks ordered Dante to return home and face accusations and stand trial. When the poet refused, the blacks condemned him to be burned to death if he ever set foot in Florence again, and so Dante began a miserable life of exile, wandering through Italy, disgraced in the city that he loved, never to return to Florence even after his death, because you don't go places after you die. You don't get to visit again when you're dead. You go somewhere else. Which gate you choose is up to you. Jesus show you the way. The life of Themistocles. Themistocles' fellow citizens reached the point at which their jealousy made them listen to any slander at his expense. And so he was forced to remind the assembly of his achievements until they could bear this no longer. He once said to those who were complaining of him, "Why are you tired of receiving benefits so often from the same men?" Besides this, he gave offense to the people when he built the temple of Artemis. For not only did he style the goddess Artemis Aristobule, or Artemis wisest in the council, with the hint that it was he who had given the best counsel to the Athenians and the Greeks, but he chose a site for it near his own house at Melite. So at last the Athenians banished him. They made use of the ostracism to humble his great reputation and his authority, as indeed was their habit with any whose power they regarded as oppressive, or which had risen to an eminence which they considered out of keeping with the equality of a democracy. Risen to an eminence which they had considered out of keeping with the equality of a democracy. So, once again, this is why democracy is garbage, because it does not embrace merit. It never has. The Life of Themistocles by Plutarch. But we was back to Dante and the Pope. Interpretation. Boniface knew that if he only had a pretext to lure Dante away, Florence would crumble. Yep. He played the oldest card in the book, threatening with one hand while holding out the olive branch with the other, and Dante fell for it. It doesn't kind of sound like Dante really had much of a choice, because Florence being a republic kind of sounds like, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna send this embassy to the Pope, and you're gonna lead it, and then when you're outnumbered in the Pope's turf, he says all of you can go back home, not you. You stay. It's really easy to kind of like switch that one up. Hello, small mousin. Good evening. Once the poet was in Rome, the Pope kept him there for as long as it took. Yeah, because, well, you're trapped now, buddy. What are you going to do? For Boniface understood one of the principal precepts in the game of power. One resolute person, one disobedient spirit can turn a flock of sheep into a den of fucking lions. Lost track of time, eh? Understandable. It's good to see you, small mouse, and it's kind of a uh small crowd kind of night. Like, shout out to the seven kicking it over on Rumbo, and the three of you here on YouTube. One over on the Twitters. I got one on the Twitters. That's freaking cool. So he isolated the troublemaker. Without the backbone of the city to keep them together, the sheep quickly scattered. Yeah, I know. 3 million on YouTube, 7.5 million on Rumble. Like, I am most popular streamer ever. That's why everybody who's watching knows at least one person who could probably benefit from these conversations and discussions. And everyone should pass the link on for the channel to all of your friends. Share it with someone you care about. Learn the lesson. Do not waste your time lashing out in all directions at what seems to be a many headed enemy. For the one head that matters, the person with willpower or smarts, or most important of all, the Riz, whatever it costs you, lure this person away, for once he is absent, his powers will lose their effect. I don't know if y'all noticed this, but the common theme I've been relating this to, like, there's the guy with the 90 billion lawsuits and like the literally they're trying to do everything from the media slander to the lawfare to the financial war, like trying to shut down the former president of the United States because they know that if you take him out of the equation, that whole unifying force that stands behind the man in the 45 jersey, they don't have a rallying cry other than like rallying to go vote in November because it's going to change something. It's going to change something this time, guys. I promise. It'll all be better this time. We're going to save America. His isolation can be physical, banishment or absence from the court, political, narrowing his base of support, or psychological, alienating him from the group through slander and insinuation. All of these things currently being executed. First, he only does deep thoughts. Correct. Cancer begins with a single cell. Excise it before it spreads beyond cure. It's a little late for that. However, I do think because they don't have any other plays, the people who currently control the strings of power have to go ahead and cut this incurable cancer out, even if it kills us, because they see it as a threat to themselves. Keys. Let's check out the keys. In the past, an entire nation would be ruled by a king and his handful of ministers. Only the elite had any power to play with. And there is an argument to be made for this system because there was a level of stability that it brought to the land. Now, there's always going to be instability and rabble rousers in every system. I have stinger covers and no. I've not seen the bee. The ninja was on the rumbly side. Rumbly side has gone very quiet. Shout out to. I've tried to shout out to the Rumble Gang a couple of times since they went quiet, but they're staying quiet. But yeah, the ninja was over there. Over the centuries, power has gradually become more and more diffused and democratized. This has created, however, a common misconception that groups no longer have centers of power. That is a misconception indeed. The power is spread out and scattered among many people. Nope, that's a lie. Hey, look who it is. Shout out to Bijou in the Rumble Gang side. And the Rumble Gang has just woken back up. Haha, Bijou, did you know I could do this? Bet you didn't know I could do this. Very cool, right? Mega. I just did. I love that. I'm going to Rumble. I'm out. All right, well, smash the like button on your way out the door. And I don't blame you if you're on YouTube and you're not watching on Rumble. Like the fuck. Thank you for being here, Darth. I mean it. I mean, thank you all for being here. Like, do you know what this discussion series would be if I didn't have all of you to talk to? It would be called the 48 Laws of Power monologue series, a book by Robert Greene. Oh, and look, there's Bijou on the YouTube side. Hello, Small. I see you over there. Yeah, I mean, it still would be a series, wouldn't it? Actually, however, power has changed in its numbers, but not in its essence. There may be fewer mighty tyrants commanding the power of life and death over millions, but there remain thousands of petty tyrants ruling over smaller realms. So every single Joe Biden has got a Gretchen Whitmer, has got a Lori Lightfoot, has got a Mayor Adams, whoever the mayor of your town is. We have our president and our local governors and then our mayors and like uh, in a lot of places there's corruption and in a lot of countries there's corruption. And enforcing their will through indirect power games, charisma, and so on. In every group, Power is concentrated in the hands of one or two people, for this is one area in which human nature will never change. Pay very close attention to what comes next here, class. This will be on the final test, and the final test is coming up. People will congregate around a single strong personality like planets orbiting a sun. More mousy gang. So much mousy gang on the Rumbles. Did everybody catch that last bit? And if you think about it right now, like the left side of the political spectrum generally does not rally around old senile grandfather Joe, but they still genuinely widely support Barack Obama. He's the symbol of the left side of power. Donald Trump is the symbol of the right side of power in our political structure. Do either of these guys actually have any power in our political structure? Not so much, not as much as you'd like to think, but the truth of the matter is that this is correct. This area of human nature will never change. He compiled the laws. I don't even know if he'd say he wrote them, because I would say he would argue that all these laws existed long before him, and he could give you many examples for every single one of them that's way older than he is. So I would say he compiled these laws, and a mighty fine, comprehensive book it is. There we go. I love the check out his YouTube channel, but buy the book. Like support the. It's a New York Times bestseller. Like, and it's a very popular book for many reasons. To labor under the illusion that this kind of power center no longer exists is to make endless mistakes, waste time and energy, and never hit the fucking target. Powerful people never waste time. Outwardly, they may play along with the game, pretending that power is shared by many. That's like all your representatives who tell you they represent you, and if you vote for them, your will be heard in the halls of power. No, it won't. These people work for themselves and the people who pay them. And you think that's you, but you don't pay them as much as the people who control them do. But inwardly, they keep their eyes on the inevitable few in the group who hold the cards. These are the ones they work on. When troubles arise, they look for the underlying cause. The single strong character who started the stirring and whose isolation or banishment will settle the waters again. Image. There's a giant orange man in a giant orange jersey with the number 45 on the front. He is the stirrer of all the shit. And only by being rid of the tyrannical fascists, worst thing since the man in the tiny mustache, we must do everything in our power to get rid of him to save democracy. This all sounds quite good in theory. In his family therapy practice, Dr. Milton H. Erickson found that if the family dynamic was unsettled and dysfunctional, there was inevitably one person who was the stirrer, the troublemaker. In his sessions, he would symbolically isolate this rotten apple by seating him or her apart from the others, if only by a few feet. Slowly, the other family members would see the physically separate person as the source of their difficulty. Once you recognize who the stirrer is, pointing it out to other people will accomplish a great deal. Understanding who controls the group dynamic is a critical realization. Er, oh, darn, it is the cheers o'clock again. I guess I'll be statistically chronically tardo every time these days. But we press on anyway. Remember, stirrers thrive by hiding in the group. Oh, well, in this case, that's not true. Disguising their actions among the reactions of others. Render their actions visible and they lose their power to upset. Not in every case. Got a strong example against that right now. A key element in games of strategy is isolating the enemy's power. In chess, you try to corner the king. In the Chinese game of Go, you try to isolate the enemy's forces in small pockets, rendering them immobile and ineffectual. It is often better to isolate your enemies than to destroy them. You seem less brutal. The result, though, is the same. For in the game of power, isolation spells death. The most effective form of isolation is somehow to separate your victims from their power base. Oh boy. When Chairman Mao wanted to eliminate an enemy in the ruling elite, he did not confront the person directly because that would be something that an honorable man would do, and communists aren't people. He silently and stealthily worked to isolate the man, divide his allies, and turn them away from him, shrink his support. Soon the man would vanish on his own, because once you no longer have your support for your power, you don't have any. Presence and appearance have a great import in the game of power. To seduce, particularly in the beginning stages, you need to be constantly present or create the feeling that you are. If you are often out of sight, the charm will wear off. Queen Elizabeth's Prime Minister, Robert Cecil, had two main rivals: the Queen's favorite, the Earl of Essex, and her former favorite, Sir Walter Raleigh. He contrived to send them both on a mission against Spain. With them away from the court, he managed to wrap his tentacles around the Queen, securing his position as her top advisor and weaken her affection for Raleigh and the Earl. The lesson here is twofold. First, your absence from the court spells danger for you, because when you're away from the seat of your power, people can play games with it. You should never leave the scene in a time of turmoil, for your absence can both symbolize and induce a loss of power. Um, there's a certain governor in high-heeled boots who is kind of was learning a bit of the lesson of that, with the seat of his power being vacated in the state of Florida, so he could go try to run against the most powerful man in politics currently, or at least the most supported and influential stirrer. And that didn't work out so well for him, and people got really mad. Second, and on the other hand, luring your enemies away from the court at critical moments is a great ploy. Isolation has other strategic uses. When trying to seduce people, it is often wise to isolate them from their usual social context. Once isolated, they are vulnerable to you, and your presence becomes magnified. You go from being just another voice in their ear to being the only voice in their ear, essentially. Similarly, con artists often look for ways to isolate their marks from their normal social milieu, steering them into new environments in which they are no longer comfortable. Here, they feel weak and succumb to deception more easily. Isolation, then, can prove a powerful way of bringing people under your spell to seduce or swindle them. Much easier to go ahead and seduce, swindle, exploit somebody when they don't have all the people who see you for what you are around them telling them, hey, that's bad news. Maybe you don't want to run over there. Hmm. You will often find powerful people who have alienated themselves from the group. Perhaps their power has gone to their heads, and they consider themselves superior. Perhaps they have lost the knack of communicating with ordinary folk. Remember, this makes them vulnerable. Okay, excuse me, I'll have to write this down. Go ahead and talk amongst yourselves. No, I'm just kidding, but I should make a note of this. Powerful though they be, people like this can be turned to use. The monk Rasputin gained power over Tsar Nicholas and Tsarina Alexandra of Russia through their tremendous isolation from the people. Alexandra, in particular, was a foreigner and especially alienated from everyday Russians. Rasputin used his peasant origins to insinuate himself into her good graces, for she desperately wanted to communicate with her subjects. Once in the court's inner circle, Rasputin made himself indispensable and attained great power. Heading straight for the center, he aimed for the one figure in Russia who commanded power, The Tsarina dominated her husband. Oh, see? See this? This is what happens when you let weak men be dominated in power by women. They get exploited by men. And found he had no need to isolate her, for the work was already done. The Rasputin strategy can bring you great power. Always search out people who hold high positions, yet who find themselves isolated on the board. They're like apples falling into your lap, easily seduced and able to catapult you into power yourself. Finally, the reason you strike at the shepherd is because such an action will dishearten the sheep beyond any rational measure. This is where we come to the point of demoralization. And this is why I said, like right now, if you took the guy I've been using as my reference point, DJT, off the board, who do you have for the people to rally behind? Are people really going to rally behind Vivek Ramaswamy, a guy who has foreign origins? Like, he was born here, but his culture and whatnot is kind of alien, being like a Hindu guy. Are they gonna rally behind Dick Cheney and Heels? All my homies hate Nikki Haley. Keyword there was weak in the weak. No, weak men is what I said. You allow weak men to be dominated by women. Like, men can't be weak. Otherwise, this happens. And then if they're in a that happens in a position of power, then you have a whole new mess. When Hernando Cortez and Francisco Pizarro led their tiny forces against the Aztec and Incan empires, they did not make the mistake of fighting on several fronts, nor were they intimidated by the numbers arrayed against them. They captured the kings Moctezuma and Atahualpa. Vast empires fell into their hands. With the leader gone, the center of gravity is gone. There is nothing to revolve around, and everything falls apart. So when you hear all these people say how important that the former president is as a symbol, it's because without that guy, there's nothing for the masses to rally around. There's nobody of anywhere near comparable power influence. So he is very important. Aim at the leaders, bring them down, and look for the endless opportunities in the confusion that will ensue. Because it will. Orange Man. There you go. We gotta save the Orange Man, guys. We gotta do it. He's a symbol of our great power. Image: a flock of fattened sheep. Do not waste precious time trying to steal a sheep or two. Do not risk life and limb by setting upon the dogs that guard the flock. Aim at the shepherd. Lure him away, and the dogs will follow. Strike him down, and the flock will scatter. You can pick them off one by one.
authority. If you draw a bow, draw the strongest. If you use an arrow, use the longest. To shoot a rider, first shoot his horse. To catch a gang of bandits, first capture its leader. Just as a country has its border, what country do you live in? Where, why can't I get there? Why can't I go to your country with its border? That sounds nice. So the killing of men has its limits. Well, at this point, you're going to have a hard sell with me on that one. If the enemy's attack can be stopped with a blow to the head, why have any more dead and wounded than necessary? Chinese poet Tufu, not to be confused with tofu. Tufu from the Tang Dynasty in the 8th century. This one's one of those pretty straightforward laws. Not super long, not super deep in the need for understanding. Like, powerful leaders will always have their powerful spots. Like, people won't follow just anyone. You can see people that are far more competent than any of the leaders we have every day. They're all around us doing social media now. They're on the YouTubes and the Twitters. Like, they're way more competent than either of these two jackasses. But they don't have that thing, whatever it is. Like, the the funny thing is, like, as much as people follow the Orange Man, everybody who is in opposition does not have a leader. They follow the Orange Man. They're just like, whatever the Orange Man does, we stand for the opposite. He's so charismatic that, like, he's basically dictating both parties at this point, because that's their whole identity, is to stop him, not to have their own base of power. It's fucking weird. I mean, their base of power is the establishment. It is the seat of power, but they have no leader. So the stirrer is the most influential person in the mix now. Reversal. I'm kind of really having a hard time thinking that there's going to be a reversal. So I'm going to go ahead and guess that this might be one of those irreversible laws, but we'll find out, shall we? Any harm you do to a man should be done in such a way that you need not fear his revenge, writes Machiavelli. If you act to isolate your enemy, make sure he lacks the means to repay the favor. If you apply this law, in other words, apply it from a position of superiority so that you have nothing to fear from his resentment. Andrew Johnson, Abraham Lincoln's successor as U.S. President, saw Ulysses S. Grant as a troublesome member of his government. So he isolated Grant as a prelude to forcing him out. This only enraged the great general, however, who responded by forming a support base in the Republican Party and going on to become the next president. It would have been far wiser to keep a man like Grant in the fold where he could do less harm than to make him vengeful. And so you may often find it better to keep people on your side where you can watch them than to risk creating an angry enemy. Keeping them close, you can secretly whittle away at their support base so that when the time comes to cut them loose, they will fall fast and hard without knowing what hit them. So there's this little bit of subterfuge to add to the mix, which is the only, like, it's not even a full reversal. It's just kind of a, like, an alteration of the law in its application more than it is a reversal. So that, boys and girls, and all my friends and retards, was Law 42. If now we could all take a moment to go ahead and hit the like button or the other one if you really feel some type of way about it. On Wednesday, we will do Law 43. Work on the hearts and minds of others. On Wednesday, I will have a big announcement regarding the rest of the 48 laws. I got a surprise for y'all. I think you're going to like it. Some of you might not, who knows. But I think you're going to like it. So make sure you're here on Wednesday at 8 o'clock for the big reveal. Any final thoughts, chat? I mean, I was looking back just the other day, and I realized that we've been doing this for almost a year now. And I was like, wow, if I'd just, maybe done one a week and not taken a whole bunch of months off, we'd still be right here right now, or damn close. Oh, dearie, dearie. Hello, my friend. Mega bummed I'm so late. I've been listening for a while. On top of that, I have so many notes about Law 41, and I just realized I already had a bunch written up on the screen. But, there's a but. After not being able to find my remote for my Roku, I jumped here and, oops. Oh no. Jumped on here and lost all you'd already written. Oh no. Sorry. In that case, bring it on. Yeah, you're ready. I think everybody's ready for it. So make sure y'all are here Wednesday, working on the hearts of minds and others. I will try to work on your hearts and minds. Don't read that judgment. Stop looking at that, you heathens. No spoilers. God, Darth, what's wrong with you? Oh, that's terrible, Heidi. But yeah, I mean, we're getting down to it, guys. We only got a couple weeks left of this, and we will be through the entire 48 Laws of Power. And what a long journey it has been. I never even considered the fact that 48 chapters would take so many hours to cover. But it's been a blast to this point, and I look forward to these last couple with great enthuse. And I hope y'all do too. Hope everybody who came 3 comes after 2. Yes. Thank you, Squab. My local theologian and mathematician. Okay, Liquor was glad it was revived. I'm sure Heidi shared the same sentiment on many occasions. A couple weeks left. What will the 3 million YouTube subs do? I will get to that too. I will get to that also on what all of my YouTube subs are going to do because I do already have figured out what I'm going to do next. That's also a surprise. It won't be a surprise to everybody because I may have told one person. So if y'all can figure out who has the secret, you can go ahead and see if you can pry that secret from that person. But until then, I hope you all have a great week and be at rest. Be at rest because God has got you, baby. You are being watched over at all times. You don't need to worry about a thing. Not a single thing. Darth likes donuts. There's only one type of donut that I actually like, and I'm not sure if you could guess it or not. You know, no, you know the secret. Oh, I know the secrets. Yes, I know all the secrets. I will share them all with you in the future. Until then, everybody take care. Be excellent to each other. Seatbelts and sidearms. I know it's getting crazy out there with like great floods in the California desert and floods of migrants across the the Texas border, and all these great floods of things happening all at once. Stay strapped or get clapped. And yeah, that should be it for this week. I will catch you this week. See you all Wednesday night, y'all. Do the small mouse and dance or something. Like, have a good time. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. And I will see you all back here 8 o'clock on Wednesday to work on the hearts and minds of others. Until then, hideous.